Welcome to the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission. Let's start by going around the room. Let's start with Pam this time. We usually start this way. And just let everybody know who you are.
Pam Dent, Commissioner.
David Baum, Commissioner.
Rick Ratliff, Commissioner.
Dwight Wilson, Commissioner.
Leslie Stambaugh, Commissioner and Chair.
Vivian Chang, Commissioner.
Crane Moore, Commissioner.
Linda Winkler, Commissioner.
Louis Shalaby, Commissioner.
Thank you. No public comment. Let's continue. Agenda. Any questions, any comments, any discussion about the agenda? That's a no. Can we entertain a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Changes and approval to the August minutes.
I have a bunch,
Okay.
but I don't have to go first. It's up to you.
You're the first who spoke.
Okay.
Please.
All right. But Heather is not here, but I guess Heather will.
Heather watches it.
Heather
And
watches
in
it.
5 days, I have to give in the changes in 5 days. So
Okay.
I will write it
Okay.
down.
It's a little tricky doing it because when you turn this into Word, she's got these in boxes, and you can't then, you can only go so far in the box, even if the text continues.
Yes.
So it's a little confusing, but.
Okay. And
okay.
if you'd send me the writing, but you have to
Yeah,
tell,
I
you have to
can-
tell people we have to approve it.
Right, no, sure, and then, okay, so under, let's see, 3D, L. Winkler said that resources will be added to the website as approved by Nancy Niemela and Lisa Wandrash. Lisa will be definitely helping, maybe along with Heather, to make the changes, but I think Nancy's the one who has to approve it, not Lisa, so.
Okay.
I have crossed off Lisa Wandrash, and then I thought the second sentence then should say, she and Dee Baum will work with Nancy and Lisa Wandrash, so I would add Wandrash there. And I was gonna say, and perhaps Heather Cook, because she has access to doing this, and Lisa had said that really maybe it was Heather's job to make some of these changes, but that remains to be seen.
Gee.
Anyway, and Lisa Wandrash on this, period, and then delete the rest.
Are you including Heather or not?
Whatever you think. I think I did bring it up, but she didn't put it in the, either way.
And possibly Heather?
And possibly Heather. And then on this, period, and then get rid of the rest.
Okay.
And then moving along.
Everybody have that one?
Moving along to E.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I was thinking whenever we say complaint, maybe we should say discrimination complaint, just to be clear what it is we're talking about here. So I added it in both paragraphs. D. Baum is working on a discrimination complaint. L. Winkler gave an update on the discrimination complaint. And then in that second paragraph, wasn't quite accurate, either the initial one or the change that you suggested, I
Okay.
think. So I changed it. So
Why don't you read
I'll
it
just
and
read
then,
the whole
and
thing,
then let me.
and then I can give it to you
Okay.
afterwards. Okay. L. Winkler gave an update on the discrimination complaint that she was working on, which involved one of the protected classes. It should be : Educational Association. The city's legal department provided advice on the meaning of the Human Rights Ordinance's definition of educational association. As a result of this complaint, it became apparent that Section 9157, subsection 10 of the ordinance needs to be amended to include veterans. And then the rest of what was there was fine.
The rest starting with L. Winkler?
I have to go to the. Let's see.
Right, okay, so everything
Yeah.
from starting with as a
Uh,
result of this complaint, to the,
To
it
L.
shall be
Winkler.
proposed,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
crossed
It's
off.
crossed off. Right.
replaced.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Oh,
If you
and
want
Rick, on yours?
If
Oh,
you
go
want
ahead.
discrimination complaint in the
Yeah.
actual sentences, do you want the header changed to,
Oh, status of discrimination complaints, yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and, yeah, feel free to. And Rick, I wasn't sure on the section F. Did you say that you thought that the letter should be both snail mailed and emailed?
Yeah, it was, that is in error,
Incorrect.
yeah.
Okay, so that should be
I thought it should be,
changed and-
sent both ways.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
that's what I'd remembered. So that would be a change. And then I think I had.
So say that,
Sorry,
send
under F.
said by a mail as well as
And
of email?
instead, cross off instead of
Yeah.
and just add and.
And,
Yeah.
okay.
And under ban the box, what is that, 4B? I would change that to say, so it would read, L. Winkler and P. Dent are continuing to research job applications in Ann Arbor to assess the degree to which present city contractors would be affected by an extension of its ban the box policy, of the city's ban the box policy to them. Rather than by any change in its ban the box restrictions. I don't know, I thought it was clearer, but.
Affected by an extension of the city's ban the box.
Policy to them.
To them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last thing, under 5A, let's see. I changed the wording to read this way. Kay Moore distributed a draft of the resolution that will be sent on behalf of the Human Rights Commission in support of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission's issuance of its interpretive statement regarding the definition of sex as a protected class. The MDCR is seeking comment on this by August 15th.
Okay. Okay, and you'll give me that piece of paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask something? The only change that I have left is related to that paragraph. And is it correct that it's the definition of sex, or is it sexual orientation and gender identity? I thought that that's what they were focused on.
I think it was defining sex.
They want it to be implied that sex includes those things.
Right.
But
All right.
so the term sex that's already in the statute,
Okay.
they believe already includes, or they would like for us.
I see. That's how it should be. So, do you think that that clarification is necessary to add into the minutes or not?
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be,
Yeah.
what would it be? Regarding, should offer an interpretive statement regarding the definition of sex as a protected class to include sexual orientation and gender identification. Does that make sense?
Gender identity, was that the extent of it though, or was there more?
That would be the extent of it, I believe. I mean, I don't have it on,
Yeah.
but I remember
I
being
have
very
it.
specific in the way
Yeah,
I drafted
here,
the
here.
resolution.
Mhm.
Gender identity and sexual orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
That's
would
what they
propose,
specify.
I would propose
Yeah,
that
that
addition.
makes sense. It's more informative to people reading it, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for your patience with me.
Thank you for looking at it.
Okay. So we leave out, we cross off as a protected class, is that right?
Oh,
We don't need it.
definition of sex, I
To
don't,
include.
I think you can leave it there, as a
Okay.
protected class to include
Okay.
sexual orientation and gender identification.
Identity, yeah.
Gender identity and
Identity.
sexual.
Or identity, not identification,
that's
correct.
right.
Sorry about
That's
that.
okay.
Gender identities.
Gender identity and sexual orientation, yes,
Right.
okay.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? Are we ready then?
I move to approve the minutes as amended.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, sounds like everybody. Thank you. Communications and promotion. Start with the website. Linda's made a lot of changes, improvements.
Well, really, all that we've done so far is to reorganize it and add some resources that I think I sent around to everybody. And it's now in Nancy's hands, Nancy Namala, who will take a look at the resources that we proposed adding to make sure it fits with the city's guidelines of what's acceptable.
Okay.
And
And
then
those
we will
resources
go
will
from
be
there.
links?
They're links. And this would not be the end of our revisions to the website. This would be the beginning of our revisions to the website. I'm sure there are other things that we can add.
And you might want to say why we're doing this.
To make, well, so that when people come to the Human Rights Commission's website, they can see not only what the commission does, how to file a discrimination complaint with the Human Rights Commission, but also are there other places where they might want to consider filing discrimination complaints? Are there organizations in town that might be able to assist them with their discrimination complaints or related issues? And so it's the beginning of adding some of that to the website. The way the website's laid out is not very visually interesting, so I'm a little hesitant to just keep adding and adding and adding unless it can be a little more user-friendly. Because if you put too much stuff, then you just, eyes glaze over. So I think we have to be, at this point, pretty selective about what we put there. Until we can maybe work some more with Lisa about boxing things off maybe in 2 columns or making it visually a little more.
Any colors? Can we
accessible.
ever use colors?
They
Otherwise-
have their, what did she tell us? They have their template for how these websites,
Mhm.
web pages are arranged. We could probably spend some time looking at the city's website and saying, we'd like it to look like this,
Yeah.
but we haven't actually
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we're trying to make it more user-friendly
More
and more.
More information.
Informational
Yeah.
for people coming to the website to find answers to questions. Well, thank you. I think it looks a lot better.
Well, it's not
And I
on-
found things.
Well, for people watching this, it's not actually up yet.
Right.
We're waiting for Nancy, and then it will have to go through the communications department and maybe Heather, and then it will be up. Yeah.
That will be good. Thank you for all your work on that. Vivian, Facebook and Twitter, anything new?
They've been updated.
So we keep announcing it, and that's important. And we should try to think about how to use it more, I don't know, maybe more effectively. But that's a huge 1,000% start on what we've had before.
Yeah.
That's good. Guest presentations, status of the project, Rick.
Well, this has been kind of a crazy month for me, so I can't say that I have moved this project along, but my intention is to have letters drawn up this month and, collect all of the addresses for the 10 organizations that we've identified that we want to have present to us. Now, I assume there are official envelopes of some sort that, or, the city would, when these are mailed, would they go into a city envelope of some sort?
We have our own
Our own,
envelopes. I mean, I'm sure the city does too, but,
Do we?
yeah. I mean, yes, we print them.
We
Oh,
print them on our own printers.
Well, I can print them on
Oh.
my printer, because I made them in.
Yeah, okay,
blue.
well,
I mean,
if you have, could I get,
It was on color.
who would I approach about getting the templates for the, for the letterhead and the.
I got the
envelopes?
letterhead and the, yeah.
Envelopes.
Okay, so
You
you
want
could
the
send
whole
me the,
scan?
Yeah.
PDFs
Do you have a
of
color
those.
printer?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Because if
Yes,
it's-
I can send it to you.
Good. Okay.
We're a low budget
Yeah,
operation.
so that's where we are.
Are you gonna send it to individual people?
That was my intention. I intended to send it to whomever is the leader of the organization.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I think that makes it more likely that they're gonna open it.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
I have a question. The last email I got from you identified the top 5 groups, but you just said top 10.
Yeah, that's right, we did just come up with 5, excuse
Yeah.
me,
Okay.
that's right.
It's
It is,
good.
yeah, thank you for that correction. Yeah.
Do you
So there we
have contact information for all these 5 organizations?
I don't, I was intending to,
Mhm.
just comb through the, their websites. If you have, if anybody does have, contact information.
Would you send the 5 of,
please.
the names of the
Yeah,
5 groups again?
to the group.
And
Yeah,
then we can
will do.
do that, because there may be somebody who's obvious who isn't necessarily the first person mentioned on their website,
Yeah,
even somebody we know.
okay.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
And you're gonna try to get them for the first 6 months of,
Yes.
Yeah, because going off of just the website for ACLU Michigan, the Washtenaw County division just opened up back again this year. There's no
Mhm.
contact information for the local unit on the website even.
Yeah.
So I was wondering how you were planning on.
Well,
getting
I
that.
have contacts in the ACLU, so I could,
Mhm.
approach them and
Yeah, I know the
work
guy
backwards.
who is restarting the Washtenaw County chapter.
Perfect,
So.
great.
so you'll respond to him when he sends the.
Well, there's no place for you to send it to. They don't have a mailbox, so I don't know where you were going to send it.
Well, if there's a person who's in charge, I would think, we could find an address for that person.
Could you maybe also send it to the state, like Michael Steinberg or somebody at the state level, and say a representative in Washtenaw County?
Sure.
I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on the other hand, I don't know, it seems like it'd be more personable to say, I understand you just became, and would you mind coming to,
Yeah,
if Washtenaw County is the one we want.
as opposed to, the state.
Right, well, yeah.
The state will, somebody from the state maybe will have a better overview if we're interested in responses to hate crimes.
Right.
Than somebody, I don't know who this person is
Mhm.
and how tied in they are to
Mhm.
the ACLU. I mean, ideally, having both of them here would be the best.
Yes,
but
probably
Seems
too.
like, I don't know.
Okay. People had identified the Washtenaw County, ACLU as the one they wanted, so,
Okay.
I'm willing to go any way the group wants to go.
Yeah, well, that's a good start for us, anyway.
Sure.
Maybe you could reach out to this person and see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that person will have a sense of whether he or she should be the one, or, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, well, that sounds, it's going to be interesting. Our meetings are going to be, we've got to be more efficient because our meetings are going to be shorter. And the idea has also triggered some thoughts for me, and involving some people we might want to have this year. There's two people come to mind as people we might want to see this year. One is the chief of police, and I think we ought to leave room for the chief of police maybe twice a year. I haven't asked him. I asked him if he'd come once. He said yes, but I think he's going to find that this is a good place. We're trying to get, first of all, we're trying to get him more well-known, and one of the advantages to us is that we are televised and we're good interviewers. And so that will help him get us well-known. It also will help build the bridge between us and the police department. So what I was thinking was the report ought to be in soon, And maybe November would be a good time to have the chief of police come in and talk to us.
Is this meant to be like a presentation from the chief of police or like a dialogue?
Could be anything, and that's it's up to you. It could be anything. And the other thing is maybe somebody from Wicker, Laura Sanders or somebody else, because DACA is such a big issue.
Yeah.
And they know an awful lot about what it looks like in Ann Arbor and how it's affecting our people. And
Was
so
that one of your
I'm thinking
five?
maybe.
That's one of the 5 already, isn't it?
Well, but this might be just a little short presentation on DACA at this point. Because I don't know, I think it's up to you. I thought it was something people might be interested in and we ought to know about sooner rather than later. But not necessarily.
Couple of quick questions. I viewed the commission meeting because I wasn't here, and I believe you said that you were going to commence this endeavor the beginning of the year.
That's right.
And then tonight.
The next calendar year.
Correct. So beginning in
2018, January, yeah.
Right.
And so with that, and along with the minutes, you indicated that you're going to send a letter and an email. So how are you going to? Does one precede the other? Do they go out simultaneously? How does that actually work?
I was assuming, yeah, they would go out simultaneously, and there would be a note, to the effect that this, that this same message has also gone out in this other meeting. And what was there another question?
Well, it was just speaking to chronologically or just how you're going to actually do it, and would the letter or email reference the other?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely say that, that there would be a sentence that would, would say that this, the same message was going out in both media.
And so there's no provision that I heard, unless you're just gonna incorporate it, if you don't get a response. So, let's say you send a letter or you email and you don't hear anything,
Mhm.
and this is one of the 5.
Well,
Then
we can always make a phone call at that point.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling,
Yeah.
I think most of these organizations will want to appear, is my guess.
And so, you indicated earlier the letters are gonna be drawn up this month, and so for next year, and so with that,
The letter includes a list of all of our, meeting dates. And,
And we're asking
they
them
can
to choose.
circle the ones that would
Okay.
work within their calendars.
Or email us back, presumably.
You're right.
Okay.
Any other questions from you?
Yes. If we do invite the police chief, and I'm not clear what type of conversation we might have with him. One of the people that's in the background, who should be in the foreground, is whoever is the head of the union.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've never spoken with him, perhaps you have. I have no clue.
Oh, you do, because she was on the election committee.
And I do.
Yeah.
But isn't there more than one union? There are like 2 or 3 different unions.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
But there's one union that reports, that's the general officer on the ground, and another one for the supervising, and
Right.
another one for the
For the
chiefs.
Chiefs.
Right.
Follow up to Dwight's question, are we going to have a focus for the discussions, or is it going to be just an open discussion about any topic, or
You mean,
with the chief of police
With the
would say
chief.
when they come? Are we asking about plans, are we asking about things that we would like to see, or just an open
either
discussion?
one, you can do it either way. But if we have him in November, he will have seen the report. I think if the people if October is too early, but in November he should, and he might have some, or it might be too early. We could also ask him, he gave me a big presentation on recruiting and training. I mean, he can give presentations
Yeah.
too. Or we can have questions for him
Mhm.
and do it that way. Or wait until next year, or, I mean, there are all kinds of things, but it just occurred to me that this is something we probably should do more of.
I like the idea of outreach too. Implicit in Vivian and Dwight and Louay's comments is I think is the idea that there should be some direction. And I don't know whether we have to pinpoint a particular topic for him, but at least we should come up with, I think, a few possible topics if we want to give him a choice that he could talk about, one or more, and then also tell him how long we'd like him to.
Right,
you know.
right.
Well,
I guess,
it seems, I'm sorry.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
It just seems logical that, if this meeting happens after the report is issued, that the report would be the thing we would have, the report and the recommendations in the report would be the thing we would have the greatest number of questions about. Is that?
I think we have to agree on the objective. What is the objective of this meeting?
Right.
What is the objective of inviting any of those groups? And have the discussion around that objective. I
Yeah.
mean, what is our objective? What are we trying to accomplish from this person who's going to come, just to come and lecture us, I mean, for some time, or we are going to ask questions? So what is it?
Good question.
What's the topic? I mean, what
And
are
it
we
will be
trying to-
different for these groups, although
Sure.
Oh, yeah, the-
I'm not
the
sure we
groups are
know
different.
that either.
You know,
Vivian's trying to pin us down on that too, and we,
No, I thought we kind of so what you're proposing with Wicker, you're asking them to address a particular issue, but what.
but not necessarily
but the
for
letter
Wicker's
The letter that you
presentation.
wrote was, tell us what your organization does.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
just
More
so that we
general.
know who you are, and then.
Yeah.
And the community,
And the community
watching.
knows.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think it would be confusing to Wicker to get two separate invitations at the same time. to
Oh,
come.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think you should, it may be that if we could put them on first and they can come soon, we can ask them, for specifically
Specific
to
issue.
also address something we're particularly interested in addition to saying what it is their organization does. But, and as far as the police chief goes, I think maybe until we see the report, we won't know
That's probably true.
exactly
what we
how we
want
want to
to
handle
do.
that
Yeah, exactly.
publicly with the police chief.
Right, and remember, when the report comes out, the report is only a series of recommendations.
That's right.
I mean, city council is going to have to, and presumably the city administrator, are going to figure out, what to implement and what not to implement, what recommendations to follow or not. So it may be a little premature to
Right.
have them come talk about the
Right.
report.
Okay.
I agree that I think the optics of it look weird so early for us to only be talking to the police chief after
Okay.
the report comes out without talking to anyone, getting
Community.
presentations or talking to anyone else,
Mm.
especially given some of the, not hostility, but some of the pushback that the
Mm.
police force has
Mhm.
against some of our stances. I don't know how that conversation is going to look like, and I don't know if it's a good idea to have a conversation about it right after the report comes out, before
Right.
we have a chance to talk.
And we don't know where we'll
About
be.
what we
You're
think.
right. Right.
I'll say one other thing, I know we're going back and forth about
Yeah.
Wicker. I actually think it makes sense to have them do one and wait until we get into our routine next year. They're gonna probably know a lot more by then about what the, well, they'll either know what the likely impact of the end of DACA is gonna be, or even if they don't know that, they'll have a lot more to say about how they're preparing
Right.
for it than they will in October or November,
That's.
I think.
Yeah.
So that's another reason to wait, I think, and have them
Okay.
do one unified presentation.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good input. Anything else? So we're really going with the original plan,
Great.
which
Works for me.
sounds good. Okay. Anything more about the guest presentations? And let's move on to the status of complaints about discrimination. Pam, what's the status?
So I emailed Linda, you, and David.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what month it came in. I believe it was May. We received a telephone call from a complainant who alleged that she had been denied service at a nail salon. And I reached out to the person and no response. Last week, the person called me and said, I rarely ever check my landline, and I saw that you did in fact return my call. So, and so we talked for a bit, and I emailed her the complaint form, and I emailed each of you, letting you know that that's what I had done. I believe I typed up the notes, and I think I sent them to you, Linda,
Yes.
to be included in our.
From the earlier
May.
yeah.
Right.
So that's the update. I checked again, and we have not received the complaint form back. So that's the status of that.
Mhm.
Based on what the complainant said, that person has until November, based on our
Statute of limitations.
statute, to get it in and have us do something.
Okay.
Then there was a telephone inquiry. It's no longer on our telephone in the
Mhm.
messages. But again, almost the same thing. Person called. This one person alleged discrimination based on their status being transgender. I believe I sent that person the complaint form as well. Haven't heard anything from that person either.
That may be the same person that I've been talking to, who has also was very interested, but didn't follow through.
Right.
And if that's, one of the things that you see is that there are a pattern of people who don't think we can do anything, and maybe we can't. I mean, that is true, but are very hesitant about fighting it. I mean, I know we've been pushing and pulling for a while now.
Well, the person who called back indicated that there are several nail salons that also don't serve. This person presents with a disability.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the person found a salon that will. And the person stated in the phone conversation what they would like to resolve the complaint is to have the salons offer the service.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ever get the complaint form,
It would be nice, yes, it would help a lot of people.
Especially given the fact that the person has identified that there is a salon that does accommodate people who present with a disability.
Mm-hmm.
So to be determined, and I'll advise accordingly.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are no other, there weren't any additional messages on the
Okay.
phone, so.
Good.
One of my mentees is quadriplegic, and he had me go to a conference on disabilities, and it opened my mind because there are 10,001 types of disability. Is there a specific one that they don't want, that some allegedly don't want to assist a particular type of disability, or?
In this case, this particular complainant, the person is in a wheelchair, and the salon wanted them to move from their wheelchair to sit in the chairs. The person wanted a pedicure. And the person said, I can't do that. You can accommodate me by bringing an alternative method to obtain the same objective. And the person said that they refused.
Good, thank you. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
Okay, I hope that person comes through. It'll be an
I
interesting
do
one.
too.
Well, we have a
This is
name and a
ridiculous.
number, a contact number,
Okay.
and an email,
Mhm.
because when they called back, I got the correct spelling. In the initial write-up that I sent you, it was spelled incorrectly, but I was guessing,
Okay.
you know, just based on the phone conversation. And so I had the person spell it correctly for me, and as it turns out, the correct spelling of that person's name is the exact email of that person.
Yeah. And we might also think about, you know, if people are really worried that there's nothing we can do, that there may be things, we may not be able to solve their problem, but by bringing the attention onto the problem, we may be able to help in some indirect way. So there are, I can imagine advantages. I don't want to give people, you know, unrealistic hope, but I want to encourage them to do it,
Yeah.
because otherwise no one knows that you've got a problem, and problems that might be fixable can't be. Anything else about complaints? Meeting date. Both Rick and David recognize that we have a meeting on Valentine's Day, and you may not want to do that. And this would be a good time to change it so that you can make Valentine's plans.
For the record, they're not the only romantic people in this room.
Sure didn't occur to
Well, they
me.
plan ahead, though.
I'll give them that.
Would you like to change the date of meeting? This would be a good time to do it. Would you like me, would you like it on a Wednesday still? A different Wednesday evening? Is that the best?
Probably you should do that.
That generally works best for,
This might be constrained by room availability.
I know, that's my
so
next thought was,
I think maybe.
if you like Wednesday, I could ask Heather to try for the next 2 Wednesdays or suggest other times. Since we've done this ahead of time, we have some chance of getting it right.
so I would recommend that you check both the 7th and the
Oh,
21st
okay.
of February, because the 7th I checked is 4 weeks after our January meeting, which is on
Oh,
the 10th.
good
So it's
for
not
you.
like we would be jammed up.
And I have a strong preference for that one over the.
21st?
Oh, you like the 7th? Okay. Other people?
Yeah,
Okay.
works.
Yeah.
Let's ask, I'll ask Heather.
February.
Of February. Okay. I don't think we need to, we don't need a resolution for, or a
No.
vote on that.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is, if the 7th won't work, I wonder if it would make sense for you, if you're checking with them, to say, well, what evenings will work?
Yeah.
Between the 7th and the 21st,
Yeah.
that might be available.
Okay,
and
so
then
you'd
when you-
rather not even count on the 21st as a second time, as a
Oh,
second
I
choice?
maybe-
I can, I just prefer not.
Prefer it, yeah. The only reason I'm saying that is, if you come back next month and say, the 7th isn't gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you're going. And so
Yeah.
that way, maybe we can propose a few others.
We
Okay.
cannot either.
Okay,
Well, I
I'd be happy
cannot
to do that.
The
21st.
21st I can.
You can't do the
He can't
21st?
do it.
Oh, he
Yeah,
can't.
the
Oh, you
7th
can't do the 21st.
The 7th I can, the 21st
Okay,
I can.
so it's not great,
Okay.
21st, unless we're desperate. Okay.
Okay.
We'll do what we can.
Gotcha.
LGBT issues.
Yes, so I met with the mayor and the liaison to the police department, Don Murphy, and he went over the job descriptions, and I think he's gonna make some minor changes, but they look pretty good to him. And he plans to give me an update, I think, at the end of the month as far as how he might enact them or what changes he proposes. Brad,
Which liaison was that?
Don Murphy is the liaison to the police
To
department.
the police department, right. Okay.
But you also
and
showed
she
him-
also needed to meet with the police chief to review the
Oh, good.
description for
Yeah.
her because he obviously hasn't been on
Right.
on the conversation. So that conversation needs to be had or is being had, and so she'll also check in. I mean, we gave ourselves a month to sort of get
Okay.
that done. Brad, who is the liaison to the mayor, is actually moving back to Ann Arbor.
Oh, good.
Or, you know, technically he never left, but I guess he's not going to be in Texas as much after October 1st. And so he reached out and said he'd be in touch with the mayor because part of the discussion was, do you want to, you know, put someone in there temporarily just in case he doesn't come back? But it sounds like he
He's
is
gonna come back.
definitely back October 1st. And so that probably shouldn't need to be addressed.
Great.
Um,
So the mayor looked at both job descriptions?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, but the
Okay.
chief hasn't reviewed the one for the.
No,
his
and the
liaison.
police website did not look like it had anything about
And,
an LGBT
yeah,
liaison.
and the mayor was like, I don't care whether it's on any of the websites.
It has to be in order to get credit, how's that?
Okay,
Now, it's on
right. Well,
ours.
his deal was like,
I
you
think
know,
it's on ours.
tell
Was it on
the
ours?
police
It's on ours.
department.
Okay, is it Dawn now?
Is it still on
It
ours?
is.
Okay.
Yes. And I tried to highlight it when, in the, I mean, it's not up yet, but hopefully in the new version it
Okay.
will be.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean,
But the police has a list of people who are responsible for special things, and it's not
It's
on
not
that
on
either.
there. Oh, it should be on there.
Yeah.
What's the point of having a liaison if nobody knows?
Nobody
that
knows,
there's somebody to
publicize
talk to?
it, yeah,
right,
exactly.
and I mean, it's part of a broader job description, but, right, obviously, they have to put it on their website.
Right.
So, I mean, do you want me to reach out to the chief and say?
No, I
No?
mean,
Do you want me to reach out to
Well-
the liaison and
It's not gonna
say?
happen if we don't.
no,
Right.
if the police, if the mayor approves it,
Yeah, the mayor absolutely didn't have a problem.
then we might have to, it has to be on some
Human Rights
website.
Commission has to, I guess, maybe you can email the chief and tell
Well, I'm
him
gonna
that
see
you
him in a
can-
couple weeks, I
Okay.
guess.
But theoretically, well, let's see. The police chief reports to
The city administrator.
administrator.
Right.
Correct.
So, I mean, can the mayor tell him to put it on his website? The city administrator would.
City administrator probably, technically you're right, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
But we can ask, I mean, we don't, you know.
yeah.
So, I mean, let's let him, Corinne, if you don't mind.
Let's
Right.
start by
Just ask.
see if he is okay with the job description, no?
So, okay, so do you want me to address it when we address the job descriptions or now?
Well,
Yeah,
I can just address it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he may
Mhm.
have hoped that it wasn't gonna.
And
I forgot.
Brad did also ask whether there was something he could do, and you know, other than checking in with the police chief about the job descriptions as well, and
Yeah.
the mayor.
Yeah,
You know, this
let's
can be
publicize
something
it.
that he can also do, right?
And it
So-
shouldn't it go out as a tweet and on Facebook? It did
Sure.
once, didn't it?
Publicity, right,
Ah,
of the positions.
That it exists
On
and
social
this is how
media.
you contact them.
Yeah.
And, you know, basic stuff.
Mhm.
yeah, that's not a bad idea.
And it's kind of in the job description,
Especially,
right?
that's,
So-
that's right, right.
And the,
Once
we've had
those are
we've had a
approved, you have,
task list sort of as well, like goals and so, yeah, those are things that he can probably get started on now. Yeah, there's no reason not
Yeah.
to.
so are you, what is this? You're gonna get something back from the mayor soon?
Yes, so we're all going to touch base at the end of this month, so
Okay.
in the next 2 weeks.
So
um,
will you have copies of the approved?
So I don't
Is that
know where he's
possible?
going, so I don't know where
Whatever.
the police chief is in the process. Obviously, the LGBT liaison to the mayor, that one should be relatively
Yeah.
quick. I don't know how
Okay.
quickly it will get.
This is actually a big deal.
Well, so I assume you have news on the scorecard. And
My
that
own-
might- that you want.
I'll tell you, my only
That might
news
help.
is, we were not asked anything about any information this time. However, my guess is that they assumed that last year's information was still true, which is, I mean, that score check card changes every year quite a bit.
So.
But, I mean, I had to ask Heather about 3 times if they'd gotten it, and if it was done, because, and she said it was done, and she would send it to us when it was published. So we'll see.
If I recall correctly, there were a couple of things for the one this year that were kind of pending, that they piggybacked on certain things, and specifically, if I recall correctly, about benefits being offered to partners.
Yes,
And they borrowed language from our sister city, Detroit, and said this should suffice for now.
that's
But
right,
that
you're
only
right.
that only gets you so far, and I know that had to go further than what it went. When we met with
Right.
both Nancy Nimela and
Robin
Robin Wilkerson.
yes. And-
So
and that is
I would-
something Robin
I would
knows things
verify
about.
that, because I don't know how thoroughly they check to ensure compliance.
Uh-huh.
But I would not want us to be in any way negligent or
Mhm.
alleging something that isn't true.
Right.
The
Well,
city doesn't, is it benefits to domestic partners of employees? Like,
Yes.
is that,
Yeah,
the city doesn't offer that?
Well,
They,
it
do.
was one of those strange things
They do.
where they,
Because we have a registry, why, it's almost
I-
a
No,
point
they
if
do.
the city
I
itself
don't
isn't
remember the
offering.
specifics. What I do recall is the incident, because we were non-compliant. And I think that they borrowed language from Detroit to meet the criteria, to put it in the scorecard, and that's how we
I-
got
yeah.
100%.
I think it was because they had the same policy as Detroit
Right,
did.
and that's why they said whatever language Detroit had, they could duplicate that for Ann Arbor, but I don't know that it was actually done. You know, that they just, and it sufficed for at that time, because the way that the scorecard was written, it was like, it didn't necessarily have to be in place, but as long as you were, I'm gonna use a term, trending in the right direction.
That's fun.
It sufficed for that, but I'm a little leery about, I don't wanna wait until that scorecard comes out to find out that we're deficient.
Okay,
So,
so when we get it, we ought to look.
and are
they're-
we
they're-
past the time for submission?
It's submitted.
Oh.
Right.
It's been submitted, so we, you know,
Can we, I believe we had asked to be notified when they receive it.
yes, we did.
I'm pretty certain that we said that, and to be included in responding to the questions. The other piece of it that I recall that we were a little iffy on was our school system. And if they had had language in their policy about how to address bullying. And I remember that specifically
was-
because I
You were
spent
doing that.
time with one of the members of the Ann Arbor Public Schools, who I believe is now, I don't know what their hierarchy is and what they call themselves, but anyway, the second in command, right behind the president. And I don't know that that language got incorporated in their policy. I know that it was being worked on, but those are two areas that come readily to mind, because I know that we were deficient in that. And I don't want us to be rubber stamping something that isn't accurate.
Right. We will know as soon as we get it, what's
So
in there.
How
and
do
the-
we address being informed when they get it? And is there any way that we can kind of ensure that that happens going forward?
We'll see. I don't know either.
Would that
But-
not come under the administrator's office? Or
It
is
might,
that?
yeah, it might be.
Well, does HR report to, everybody reports to the administrator, right?
Correct,
So-
except the attorney's office.
Okay, so I think we need to ensure that happens going forward, and I don't wanna wait until this time next year, or even this one comes out to find out that we're deficient. There's a reason why we asked to be included, and it ensures that our city is not only compliant, but that we're doing what we say.
Mhm.
You know, it's nice to be known as the #1 city in, you know, whatever, on
Yeah,
whoever's.
yeah, rankings, yeah,
Right,
exactly, yeah.
But it's another thing
Substance.
to actually be that, not just say that.
Absolutely.
It's fair. Okay.
So can I ask a question about it? If I understood the conversation, we've submitted whatever application they require for the scorecard. And it's unclear whether we're going to get credit for the LGBT issues and the bullying issues. Is there a way to amend our application at this point? Or is the deadline a hard deadline?
I think
and
the
that's-
deadline is hard.
And when you say
It was
"our,"
hard before.
When you say "our," who are you referring to?
I guess.
City.
Well, I
It's
guess
the
that's a good
city,
question. The
it's
city,
not us.
so it's
It's
not
not
us.
us. No,
Just
no,
to be
it's not
So the
us.
city has
Just to be
submitted it.
clear, the
Right.
That's
city,
right.
the
All
city
right.
did not ask for our input on this. Even though it was partly, we brought it to their attention last year when the score was, what, 77?
something. And we were
it-
behind
Right.
cities that clearly,
Right.
in our opinion, were
Thank
not
you.
as
Thank
progressive
you for
as.
not naming them.
We're not as progressive as we are.
Then the city did take the ball and run with it.
And we got 100%.
Got
Right.
100%, and now I think that they are, you know, they feel like they've got this thing, I
Okay.
guess, and so.
Okay.
But every year, the questionnaire changes and it gets harder and harder to make it. And it's an important, it's an important number.
And I think, I'm just a little fuzzy on the details, but I thought that there was some leeway with submission subsequent to or amending it subsequent to submitting it. I could be wrong, but.
It's already been no, there wasn't before, and I don't think there is now. My guess is, well, I can find out, but this is now the time of submission. At least it was the time of submission last year.
Mhm.
And once they have their hard date, I think it's firm. That was the problem, that was part of the problem. And they don't amend it for a year, so.
Yeah, and so you're stuck with whatever score you're getting.
Right. And it looks very bad for us if we don't have a good score, especially because we've worked very hard to get a good score. And that's one of the many reasons that we went for job descriptions for these two liaisons, because we want to keep it, and it's very easy to say you have a liaison because you've got a name, but not anything else behind it. I think our first step should be to look at it and to do the checking, and then make an agreement with Human Resources or city administrator, probably city administrator. But those are two things that because they did so much of the work, that they knew a lot about, and hopefully were smart enough not to, to do the checking that needed to be done. But I don't know.
Okay.
And after 2 years, they definitely will need help again, because things do change that fast. Okay. So we're now down to police review project, right?
Is that right? Old business police review, right. Got it.
Okay.
Just going right to hate crimes.
Okay. This afternoon, we had a phone call with Deborah Kirby. David, do you want to?
Sure, we being Leslie and I did. And I think you may recall that we are trying to, we were trying to be more structured with Deborah and be able to have some regular communications with her, given that she wasn't able to come to our meetings regularly. So here's what she told us today. She described the report as in the final stages of validation and review. I think those were her words. And the delivery of that report is anticipated, she said, soon. My sense from that was that it was in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
And she expects, although she can't control this, that Mr. Lazarus will share the draft with several stakeholders, and that we will be among those stakeholders. That's been, the plan. I assume that City Council may be another one.
So did you say the draft or the final?
Well, so she kept saying the word draft
Right.
of it. And that led to a little bit of a discussion about, well, what happens when stakeholders see the draft? Will there be a period for, notice and comment and possible changes? And, the answer was that it wasn't clear. I suppose that's going to be a little bit up to the city administrator and maybe city council too, about how much back and forth. We said, look, having back and forth and getting a final report issued sometime in March or April of next year, wouldn't be all that productive, because we want to move forward. At the same time, it sounded like there would be some opportunity. There might be some opportunity, but that's nothing that we control, and I assume that has to do probably a little bit with the contract that they signed and how they and the city administrator work that out. This is a little bit of speculation on my part, but she kept calling it a draft. And I guess what she said is they have to get it drafted by a deadline, and she didn't say what that date was, and in fairness, we didn't ask her specifically what that was, in order to comply with the contract. But it sounded like there might be opportunity for some input into the report. She did receive Leslie's report to her, or a report from Leslie last week on the meeting that took place on September 6th at the Bryant Community Center with some other community members. And Deborah said that some of the issues raised at the Bryant meeting already have been addressed in the report draft. And she also said more generally that the feedback from this meeting that she received through Leslie would be taken into consideration as Hillard Hines worked to finalize the report. She also said, and I think, and Leslie and I agree that this was right, that some of the things that were raised at that meeting are things that are obviously going to need to be addressed, regardless of whether or not it makes it into the report. And you can probably talk more about that than I can, Leslie. I will add that we asked her specifically about her communications with Donnell Weiss. She hasn't been successful in reaching him, and also she hasn't heard back from Patricia Dixon, who is the executive director at Arrowwood. She did mention that, she said to us that a couple of her teammates were at Arrowwood at least once, perhaps twice. I think that Leslie is going to follow up with her to determine, who were those teammates and who did they see at Arrowwood, and that's where we left that.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
You mentioned, did you say September 6th by any chance?
Yes.
Was there a second meeting at Bryant? Because I was.
Yes.
Oh.
Right. So you want to describe the circumstances
Yes.
about that meeting, Leslie?
Yes, I would. As you all know, we had lots of concerns about this not reaching some of the people that needed to be reached, we thought needed to be reached. And we have been doing some things to make little attempts to at least touch those communities. Remember, and Deborah also said this in the phone call today, our conference call, this is the beginning of a long process, and there are going to be lots of time for input. For me, it's very important to touch at least some of the people in each community early, because although they can come back later, it gets harder for them if they're left out at the outset.
Initial report, yes.
And so, even though we know that this is not an inclusive group where we've got everybody talking who wants to talk by any stretch of the imagination, we wanted at least to get a group that was more representative of some of the people in the Black community who wanted to talk, clearly. I worked with some people from Bryant Community Center and from that area to see how many people we could get together. Not that I wanted a crowd, but what I wanted was the right people who knew what was going on. And to have more of an intimate group where we could sit around a table and talk instead of a lot of people presenting where people feel uncomfortable anyway. And Deborah, as you know, couldn't make it for another trip. There isn't, we're dealing with money as effectively as possible. But Howard Lazarus was very interested in doing it himself. And I think that was actually a better choice, because he, of course, is the person who the report goes to. And what's said in that meeting was going to be looked at differently if Howard had actually, if they'd said it to him, rather to her. So.
And he was there.
And he was there, and he was really very effective. There were about, I counted about 20-some people. Dwight, do you want to talk about what you thought happened, or or some comments, observations from that group. He was the only one I invited because I didn't want us and.
To dominate,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
There was some fear that we might not get enough people to come to the table. So I asked people from Transforming Washtenaw and from Black Lives Matter if they would come, and they did. I was asked afterwards how I felt about what had taken place, and I was very pleased. White people spoke up very effectively, and black people showed their anger very effectively. There is a lack of trust with all of those who are in power. This is nothing new. I think it started in 1619. And if it's abated, I don't know when it did. Howard did listen. He took more ownership than I expected him to take. He said that when he had spoken with the police chief, he told him before we even began that there is going to be some form of oversight. I was relieved to hear him say that. There are people who really did not want to come who I got to come. And they came because I told them straight up, I need for you to be here. Because I told you the last time we met, I was getting something like, I didn't average, but I would guess it would be 4 to 5 emails a day. Now that has slowed. And I really don't know. And I've seen the person who facilitates the Washtenaw, Transforming Washtenaw group 3 times since that meeting. I don't know if they've slowed because the trust is lower or because they think we're on the right track. And frankly, I haven't asked the question. Aside from my friend, my wife, my best friend in town, is a Chinese American. And she wanted to meet a couple of days later, and she told me some concerns she had, and she's been trying to get Hiller and Hines to meet with some people in that community. They met with her, but not with them, the ones that she wanted them to speak with. I don't have clarity as to whether or not we are going to be able to respond prior to the report going out. You say draft, but you didn't nail it down, and who knows what that draft means. I still feel too, and I live with this, and I honestly don't know what to do with it. The people who were sitting at that table, almost to a person, was articulate. Howsoever, as Granddaddy would say. Many of the people who are most abused are not. And trying to get them to speak out to someone with the rank that Howard has is very close to impossible. I keep going back to my father, who got kicked out of school in the 7th grade. And there's no shot that you could have gotten him in that room. My brothers have high school degrees. 2 of them do. One of them is a banker, and he obviously has more than that. He would have come. But the other ones would not have come. under any circumstances. Would any of my cousins have come? No. Can I get any of the people who I've talked to on the street to come to a meeting like that? No. He asked for email addresses and said that only if you want to be apprised as to how things are going, but we're not going to use those. Too many people have told me I don't want to be on anybody's list. You know, I don't want anybody to even see my face. But this is what I'm concerned about.
You can tell this is a different meeting than the other meetings that a lot of you have gone to.
The whole process that we have been using is bourgeois. Straight up. Straight up.
Right.
And where do we go from here? I don't know.
Can I ask a question, Dwight?
Sure.
Thank you for saying all of that. I guess what I want to know is this. In your opinion, the people who were sitting around that table who were articulate, did you have a sense, and you were one of them, and I don't know how much you participated in the meeting yourself, you haven't said, but did you and or the others sitting around that table, were they relating things that other people who were perhaps in that group of less articulate people experienced, right?
Oh,
So-
good.
Well, so that makes me feel a little better. Obviously, you know, first-hand
they
accounts
were.
are best, but
They were. They
it
were.
may be the best that you can do, right?
They were, but
Or we can do.
it may very well be the best that we can do. But again, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, because if I'm not, why even be alive? In America, you need white voices to say something, or it gets discounted. That's what white supremacy does to a society. That's why we're so thankful for the whites who spoke up. It's a lot of what stops people who are not articulate, who are feeling oppressed from speaking, is an attitude that they're inferior because they can't speak the president's language. No, we used to have a excuse me. Because they can't speak the acceptable language. It could be the best we can do is just have somebody else speaking for them. But I don't like to be speaking for somebody else. Frankly, I would rather she or he say their piece. But if it happens in our society, it'll be after I'm buried. But I do have the sense that people who were there have been speaking with people, and they were bringing up all sorts of things about kids, high school kids, and how they've been abused in school, on the street, etc. And it wasn't because they read these things in the newspaper, it's because they've had the experience with them. And some of the people who I spoke with, homeless, having all manner of disabilities, I'm pleased with the meeting. That's all I can say.
I just have one specific question. So these people who were around the table, you say they were articulate, they were able to, at least to some extent, represent what was going on in society, those people who didn't. My question is, were there, I know there are structural issues in a society, hierarchical society such as ours. That would be a general critique. I'm more interested to know whether specific instances or examples of police
Yes.
They
came
gave
up.
them.
Yes,
They
they
gave
did.
them.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
they
yes.
gave them. They
Absolutely.
again.
Okay.
They weren't
Okay.
speaking in generalities,
Okay, good.
and they weren't speaking from a book.
Okay.
Yes.
They were
Great,
speaking
great.
experientially.
Yeah, no, but you were talking about school system, and I have a son who used to go through the school system, and he's on the autism spectrum. So I know there's like bullying and things like that, marginalization, ignoring. So I always felt I had to speak up for him, whether it was during IEPs or any school issues. But I'm speaking firsthand, right? Because again, he's not articulate. If he was just sent on his own, he wouldn't have got half the services he got, but he had an articulate mom, so I would go. So, but it was firsthand, I would give them. So I was just wondering whether no, it's not firsthand, but I'm representing somebody who faced it firsthand. So you had enough people speaking about people who had faced discrimination or...
Yes, I have faith in them.
Yeah.
I have faith in them.
Never
Great.
enough, but
Okay,
a
great.
lot.
Because that's what was missing of actual
Yes.
examples of...
Yes.
I think this would not sound foreign to any subgroup. And this is based on lack of trust that is based on previous experiences, either with those individuals or with
Community.
their race or with their
Yeah.
peers. And not everybody has an articulate mom that would go out and explain to them or fight for them. So is this the best we can do? It's good, but I think the best that we can do is to repeat those experiences, to provide more opportunities for those, I hate to use the term those people, but for any group to meet the police, to hear about their rights, to be educated. So that's the only thing that we can do. And whether it started 300-400 years ago or now, or it will continue, especially with the present circumstances, especially with what's going on right now. So I think we need to repeat those experiences and to educate people. And hopefully this would establish some trust, at least if not with the authority, with the people who are trying to bring these groups with the authority.
Well, one of the people who spoke, and I hope this is the last thing I'm going to say, professionally works with young people who are incarcerated, and said none of them have been spoken to.
Right.
And said none of them have been spoken to. And that's a problem.
A couple things. One is that I'm thinking that the consultants can only do so much. City administrator has said a number of times, at some point we have to own this process. And we may have to be the ones, or we deputize some other people, but somebody's got to do it. This was definitely a different session. I heard a lot of things I had not heard before. Some of them were a little hair-raising. And interestingly enough, to me, I asked somebody about the session, and was told, yeah, it was good. I didn't think it was as good as a lot of people did, but because I knew everything. And I said, well, even this incident that I found hair-raising, and I was told, well, that happens all the time. And my sense is that people don't say things because, of course, everybody must know because it happens all the time, and to them.
Yeah.
And I mean, because if you'd heard the story, you would have not been happy that it happens all the time. I mean, so I am thinking that step 2, whoever does it, has got to be more bringing in people. One of the things I thought was very good about it, we handed out a piece of paper, and it was available at the beginning and at the end, and said, if you want to stay in the loop, if you want to be involved in, maybe get involved in some of the next steps, be informed as to what's going on, give us your email address. Almost everybody signed it, and that surprised me because I did think, but I think we established some trust with some people, and that's a good thing.
Yep, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard. I mean, I actually went and posted this at 6 different housing complexes that I thought were targeted. First of all, it's hard to get it posted at a housing complex. Almost every one said I'd have to ask my boss or my board members or whatever. We've got a sort of a no posting policy, and so some people wouldn't let me do it. And we didn't get, even with that, we didn't get hundreds of people. We didn't get tens of people. We got about 20-some people. And it was mainly because people like Dwight and some of the others brought people. And that's the way you do it. And it's not, I mean, it'd be hard for consultants to do that. And for us to ask might have been naive, but I think we did good stuff.
Can I say three more things about our meeting with Deborah, and actually one other comment about the September 6th meeting. Whether or not, or I guess I should say, whether or not, or alternatively, no matter how much or how little of what was said at that meeting makes it into the report, I actually think it was at least as important, if not more important, that Howard Lazarus was
Amen.
there, and that he could hear it.
He really heard it.
What I heard from Leslie, and I think I'm hearing from you, Dwight, is that he was very much concerned about what he was hearing, and in the end, he's going to be one of the key people who has to implement whatever changes that are going to come about. So I actually think it was a great thing that he was there. Two other things that we touched on during our phone conversation today. Leslie suggested that there was a Muslim group that Deborah should speak to, and that obviously is not, well, I don't know if it's obvious, but that's not going to happen before the report is drafted. But Deborah said engagement will be ongoing, and it needs to be if it's with the community, if the process is going to be effective. And so there will be an opportunity for Hillard Hines to speak with this group in the future.
Right.
And then the very last thing she said, we asked her about when she would be back in Ann Arbor. She thought that she would be sometime early October. We talked about that our next meeting is October the 11th, and that may or may not coincide with when she's able to be here, but we at least let her know that was the date of our next meeting. So we'll see.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I had. Was there anything more you wanted to
The only
add?
other thing I want you to know is that I did suggest to the major parties that when the draft comes in, we take some time to look at it first, make sure, just mainly wording kinds of stuff, because my thought was, once the press gets it, we start polarizing, and I'd like to, one of the things we did when we did our report was that we talked about it, and when we talked about it with the attorney and the city police and the city administrators, they all had different ideas about what was offensive, and once we took all that out, the content didn't change, but the triggers changed, and I thought that was a good process. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think everybody is considering it. They're also concerned that the people don't think that this isn't a neutral report. I mean, we bought a neutral report for its neutrality, and that's got some advantages too. So I don't know how that's going to come out, but I want you to know that this is an idea Pam has talked about from the start, and it is something we did talk about. I just don't know what's going to happen. And maybe I won't know. I mean, maybe once, my guess is Howard's going to read it first, and he's going to have some thoughts about how to do it. So that's where we kind of went there. And Lou, we talked about the group of students who want to talk to her, and we'll find a way. I think the more we talk to people, the better. There's really, people need to talk.
Just a quick question, when you mentioned that in your conversation with Deborah, that she shared that someone on her team spoke with Pat Vereen Dixon.
She didn't say that.
Okay, that they had some kind of contact?
She said that some people on her team had contact with Arrowwood.
What does that mean?
Well, that's why Leslie, when Leslie said can you tell me who? And Deborah said, I don't have that information at my fingertips, but I can get it for you. And I think that Leslie will be following up.
I think so, yes.
Via email to add, that's what we discussed at some
Yeah.
point, to see if we can get actual names.
And I'm very specific about that because I had shared 2 commission meetings prior to now that I would reach out to the executive director, who was Pat Marie Dixon, for Arrowwood. And I did. And she was quite emphatic that she had not been contacted, neither anyone on her team. More importantly, she said they would have welcomed being contacted, and she would have set it up that the community was there. So I'm especially concerned about who that contact is and what. And if it was anyone other than her, that strikes me as being very odd.
Heard. We'll check it out. Hate crime conference. There was a MIAC hate crime conference. MIAC, by the way, is the Michigan Alliance Against Hate Crimes. And it's something that, because of us, Ann Arbor now has belonged to for a number of years. And they've had conference probably for the last, you remember, 7 years? Something like that.
Oh, at least 10.
At least
Because
10?
I think this was the 10th, right? Because
It might be, that's right.
I think that the keynote speaker spoke at the first one, and
That's
this
right,
was
you're right.
10.
It's 10
10
years.
years later, and in
And I
fact-
went to it.
In fact, 10th annual, there it is.
Yes.
I get it.
And I don't know, I thought it was pretty good. Linda, what did you think? You went?
Oh, yeah, there were it was all very interesting. The morning speaker was Professor Blazek from Portland. Talked a lot about, they had the awful stabbing on the public transit in Portland, a hate crime, and he talked a lot about how a community should respond in the short term to events like that, and then in the long term over time. And he was a very good speaker, and there was a lot of really good information, a lot of which would be really useful to any sort of community response group
Right.
that Ann Arbor had, or for the city, or for the police, or everybody, but really the community response group, which should have members from all of these groups on it, on how to respond. Another talk that I went to was there were breakouts, so you could choose. Was a fellow named Tonai Glavinik, who is with the Dangerous Speech Project, which is connected in some way with Harvard, but also exists somewhere else. One thing he said that really I thought was interesting, in responding to hate speech, and what they have found is that reason and logic and making a reasonable argument that's in opposition to what these people are saying to them is not effective. That it's much better to find some kind of common ground with them, like if everybody could agree that violence isn't the answer, and then go from there and figuring out where to go, or humor. Humor has worked. But trying to be rational in response to hate from their research is not effective. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, it was a good day, and there were several hundred people there, the largest attendance they've ever had, which
400.
is 400, which is good in one sense, but bad in the sense that people obviously feel like there's a need for this. So.
Mhm. David, anything you want to add?
Not much. I will agree with the keynote speech in the morning about Portland's comprehensive response to this horrible hate crime that occurred there. It was really interesting and useful, and it was. The only thing I want to add was it was comprehensive, not only short term and long term, but comprehensive across all dimensions. How does one, or how should one, and one maybe being the city government as well as community activists, mobilize different components within a community. So how do you get the media involved? How do you get the right governmental organizations and governmental affiliated organizations like ours? How do you get other individuals and groups that have something to add constructively mobilized and involved? It was clear that he's a researcher, but what was great about him was that he wasn't a researcher who was speaking in an academic bubble. It was actually very, wonderfully applied research. The same speaker in the afternoon also spoke about, in the afternoon he did a talk on the alt-right.
Oh, really?
And
Same one?
The same speaker.
Oh,
And I didn't take notes, but it was just fascinating and I also walked in the middle of that when I left one presentation and walked into his. And he's got a lot of knowledge about how the alt-right works and how they use the media. This is the kind of person who, if we ever decided to, do some work in that arena, that we might want to reach out to and contact. He was very good. I went to another session on, the presenter for which was an assistant U.S. attorney for the Florida's Middle District, and he described basically a community group that the U.S. Attorney's Office and various stakeholders in the community had put together to, and here's a quote, develop viable solutions for interrupting what he called the bias continuum. And they also developed an interactive online teaching tool that he demonstrated. I was excited beforehand about the tool. Unfortunately, he didn't spend that much time, and it was sort of hard for him to describe the tool in the abstract rather than seeing how the tool actually worked in great detail. But anyway, it was interesting. And then another interesting speaker was Catherine Layman, who is the current chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. She had formerly been in the Office of Civil Rights within the Department of Education, where she was very involved in Title IX related issues related to sexual misconduct. And I learned some things about the commission. It's interesting, how is this person who is an Obama administration appointee get to be the chair of the current Civil Rights Commission? Well, Obama appointed her, and this is one of those commissions that doesn't necessarily serve at the pleasure of the president. They serve beyond that. And it's actually a bipartisan commission, and she talked a little bit about some of their overall initiatives. But I thought the day was somewhat useful, and indeed, even though you're right, it was a sign of the times that there were more people there than ever. I'll flip around and say, hey, look, given what's going on, the fact that they had that kind of attendance, it would have been worse if, given what was going on, there were only 50 people at that conference. There are an awful lot of people who are energized and motivated to do constructive things in response to what's been going on.
Yeah, speaking of what's going on, I mean, this 2016 report, which shows that the number of incidents has increased from 2015 by 23%, and that in every category it's in double digits, an increase of victims and offenders and whatever. I mean, that's really terrifying.
That's true.
Wait till you see this year's.
And this year's going to be worse. I'll tell you,
2017.
I've been looking at this data since about 2000, about 10 years. And I think the highest was 2008, where it was 700 instead of 500. But it had been going down, and now it's back going up, and it's up quite a bit. One of the things that I heard from the Hate Conference, there was a panel at the end that included people who represented groups that help people, mostly from Anti-Defamation League, the Muslim, I don't remember which group that was.
CARE.
I don't think it was CARE this time. I don't know why, but
I mean,
there was a
woman from the ACLU who was a Muslim.
That's right. She was from the
assistant director.
ACLU. They had lots of different advocacy group heads, and every one of them said our complaints are way up. ADL, I think, said that they used to take 2 a month and now they're getting 2 a day or something. I mean, it's that much different. And here, if, I think last year, Ann Arbor Police Department got 4 hate crimes, things that were coded as hate crimes. Hate crime, by the way, is a crime, can be anything from graffiti to murder. I mean, that is motivated by hate. And when it's first put on the books as a hate crime, it's suspected, there's a reason to suspect it was motivated by hate. Sometimes that changes, they find out it's really motivation is evidently very hard to prove. But there were 4 recorded for us last year, in 2016, for Ann Arbor Police Department, and there were 4 already just this month, I mean, in August. So I mean, things are bad, and they're mostly graffiti, but, you know, no murders yet, but. And that is part of the reason I'm thinking that we ought to revitalize the community response group. And I talked to you about the community response. I know I've talked to each of you about it when we had our first coffee and introduction. But we haven't done anything, and we haven't actually done anything with that group for a couple of years. But if hate becomes, if it becomes more, it is becoming more of an issue. And it seems to me that we've got to have people who are ready to respond. And when I say respond, I mean people who can reach into the community, find out how they're doing, be a resource to get information out to them, or we can do something to help. What if we have all kinds of things, including a march, all this stuff? It means going back to all those people. I mean, the group, there was a group, it was active for a couple years. It started in 2010. I think the last thing had to do with our roster. And it does mean we coordinated. This is what we did when we had no power at all to answer complaints, but we knew that we had to do something to reach out to the community. And this was a way to do it. And there have been, you know, we haven't changed the world, but we did make some differences somewhere. This might be the time to make a
And I believe if we're talking
bigger.
about establishing more trust or building more trust, this would be a good step forward.
What do you think? Is this worth our doing? It means a little bit of effort for at least some people on this group.
What would bringing it back entail? Like what?
Probably we start with calling the people who were on it before and making sure they're still alive and well and still interested. And let's say we get 50% of those people, and we're talking about, when I say people, this includes people like the sheriff and the chief who are already, they're still obviously active. But public schools, hospitals, faith-based organizations, advocacy groups, people like Dispute Resolution Center who can do some help, people like, there's a group in town, I don't remember what they're called, but they deal with marches and things like that. They have a way of intervening that is peace-giving. In fact, maybe they're called Peace something. I don't remember, but I've got that information. It's a group of interested people who can be useful in any kind of a. You need a sort of a people with wide range of skills and contacts and experiences and communities that they can come back to, and.
Can you give us some examples in the past of when the community response group mobilized
Yes.
specific incidents?
Yes. One incident had to do with a woman who was stopped at a red light, and person drove up next to her, she was wearing a hijab, and she stopped next to her and threatened her with a gun and told her to go away, you don't belong here, you're a terrorist. And she called the police and got inadequate response and called us. And that was very helpful. I mean, at least she felt better, we felt better. She was taking it, I mean, it was on the news, Detroit news. So she was taking it further, but she wasn't getting any solution. We were able to do something that I think changed the way 911 handled those kinds of calls, or at least, you know.
What did the group actually do?
We talked to her, and then we listened to the tape of the 911 call, and then we showed her the tape. You know, we talked about that, and then we talked about what went wrong when she called 911, and they didn't give her a response that sounded like they didn't treat this as something that was taken seriously. Part of the reason they didn't was that she didn't report it as well as she might have. And one of the things you saw when you listened to the 911, even when she listened to the 911, she said, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was so inarticulate."
Because
I mean,
when you're scared.
You're scared.
Yeah.
But the 911 person should have realized that.
Yeah.
And should have, and she said things like,
So did
to
the
the,
community team talk to 911 or?
yes,
or?
yes, and we talked to the people who ran 911 and ran the training about how to do that differently. And helped everybody see how it went wrong. Hopefully it helped.
Does there need to be a specific complainant who approaches the community response group?
No.
I mean, could it be a response, I mean, would there be a community response to, you know, Charlottesville or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, there was
Yeah.
another
That's
thing we
mostly
did. There was a doll.
Yeah.
A black doll found in Burns Park schoolyard, and it was hanging from a tree on a chain by its neck.
Yeah.
And it was kind of not dealt with in a way that took it seriously. The principal, I mean, you know, it rattled people.
Yeah.
So the principal put it away and didn't talk about it. And didn't, I mean,
Did she not report it?
she reported it, and the police knew about it. They tried to find some. I don't think anybody ever found anything. But we also talked about and no information came out about it from the school. The school didn't say anything, and so some people knew about it. So people were outraged. How come there isn't more rage?
Some people knew about it. You told me when you were interviewing me, but I lived 20 feet from the park, and I hadn't heard about it.
Well, there was an article about it, and then there were comments about it by other people who said, "Where's the rage? Why aren't more people? No one cares." This and you didn't know what really happened. I mean, but it didn't look. There were optics, and it should have been dealt with in a different way. And so we tried. We talked to somebody from the superintendent's office and the principal and the person who was in charge of publicity for the schools or PR for the schools, and wrote a letter to the editor sort of explaining what went well and what might be done differently next time. I mean, so nothing mind-shattering, but maybe helpful.
Yeah, so my question is, how does this group, so let me back up and say, now that we have a complaint process
Right.
here, what would the value added of reactivating this group be above and beyond what we're supposed to be doing as a commission? And I'm not asking that, prejudging the issue. I just honestly want to know what the difference is. I wouldn't want to duplicate too much efforts, but what would be the value added of this group beyond above and beyond what
First,
we
let
do?
me tell you that the community response group started off by the Michigan Alliance Against Hate Crimes. And what they were trying to do is form a network across the state. And they do have other groups across the state. And part of that has to do with the fact that there are 28 hate groups in Michigan. We've got one of the highest numbers.
Okay.
And some of these things are are coordinated efforts. They look like they're one-offs, but they're not. And so you want to see what other people are doing and what other people are getting. So that's one piece of this. Another piece is the idea that the reason hate crime, first of all, hate crime has, if you're prosecuted for a crime like graffiti, it's a certain level of offense. It's one more if it's also considered a hate crime. Hate crime is considered worse because it affects not only the people directly involved, but their communities. And it affects all of our community in a lot of ways because everybody who
Feels threatened, yeah.
feels threatened. The community response sort of has the mindset that it takes a community to heal hate. That it can't be just the police, it can't be just, the administration, it has to be the community. So it brings the community together. It says in some ways, it tries to say to the community that's affected, we're behind you, it's not going to happen in our town. It may do things, it may help the people who need support. It might help the police. Sometimes it helps the police get people to talk about it, to help them. For example, when something happens in the gay community, often it's not reported because people don't want to come out and report it. So there are ways that we might be able to support it so that we can help it come out.
I guess my question is still David's question, because those are all good points, but I still don't understand why we need a separate body to do it instead of us. I don't see the benefit of another group doing these things when it seems like we are empowered to do all these things.
Well, we don't want to organize a march.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, there is a
exactly.
point
Yeah,
where
exactly.
we just
Okay.
do not want to put that on ourselves. And
Yeah.
there are other people out there who are like, I'm good at this.
Mm.
I can organize a march. I know what organizations need to be involved.
Whom I
You
should
know, I mean,
contact, yeah.
we've had like 4
Correct.
different events, right, this month. And sure, we can follow up and make sure people get prosecuted, but do we want to be the ones to sort of bring the community together and
That's
have a
beyond
community
that.
response? Not necessarily. That's just above and beyond. And I don't know that, we want to be the organizers of that.
What's the relationship between that response team and us, though? Do we appoint members to it? Are we in charge of it? Do we have control over it? Are these two independent bodies? Do we create it and just let it go?
In the past, we said we coordinated it. We weren't allowed to actually do much, so we said we coordinate, and we told city council, and city council said fine. So we were allowed to do that. We probably could do it a lot of different ways. But people do know us, and they probably will. It's nice to have a governmental body who has at least a leg in it, give you some representation.
And that would be us being represented on the response team? Is that what you're?
I'm
response group, I mean?
suggesting. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it the
Or
way
done
it used to
group.
be. It doesn't have to be this way, but
Okay.
because we were coordinating it, and 2 or 3, I think 3 of us were members.
Did they report back to us? Like,
Yes, yes,
what
they
do?
reported. They kept reporting to us about what was going on.
And Leslie would
But
convene
Leslie
meetings.
convened it.
Yes,
Yeah,
I convened
She was
it.
at any meeting that happened, Leslie was there. So the big advantage, I think, is that because you have somebody from the schools, and you have somebody from the police, and you have
Yeah.
somebody from, I think maybe even the university, public safety.
Yes, we did.
If you have representatives of all the major kind of institutions in the community, and there's a hate thing, like God forbid in Portland, you can do what this Professor Blazek said, all of these, like controlling the flow of information, if there's some kind of memorial by the community, you come together in a really, organized way. If you've got the buy-in of all of these people, I don't know, there were all kinds of things.
So it sounds like there are
Manage
people
the media response,
who
everything.
represent different parts of the community more than we do.
Right.
With different, with skill sets beyond the skill sets that we in this group have.
Right.
And
And connections.
Right, well, and connected to other parts of the
Power.
community. The other thing that
Money
occurs to
even.
me is, this group isn't bound by the Open Meetings Act
That's
or
right.
the,
That's
if
true.
more than 4 of them are together, there has to be an notice and it has to be recorded and
That's
all
right.
of that. So it sounds like it's going to be a little bit more agile than we're able to be in that respect as well. So
one
that's
of-
helpful, thank you very much.
One of the things that I see that would come out of this group, not only to make sure that the legal aspect is taken care of, but also as a support. For example, after the tragic events of September 11, there was something like this, from the police liaison, where I remember a couple of homes, kids would go and ruin the lawn of a Middle Eastern professor. And, she did get, the police there, and they would go. However, we were dispatched there just to go and assure her that things will be fine. These are your rights. That's how you deal with it. So that's what, just to support the victim, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be just to make sure that the legal aspect is taken care of. It could be again establishing the connections, the trust, and supporting them.
Well,
And I think it would be a very, very good thing, and I would love to be in it myself.
Great.
Yeah.
it seems like the other thing that I keep thinking is that we talk about optics. I think the optics of having an organization that represents lots of different parts of the community united against, hatred, it sends a powerful message to people who hate, that they're facing a wall of opposition.
And I know the group was active briefly, but, for better or worse, people, I think, lost the enthusiasm because their hate seemed to be, not
That's
in the
right.
forefront.
That's
Now
right.
that it's back, I think you'll find that all of these people will step up,
I
and that
think
you,
so.
you won't be twisting arms like you were for a while.
Totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
One of the problems with these kind of groups is you don't want them to meet every month for nothing. These are usually they're higher level people,
Right.
and they've got a lot of work to do. They're working. They're running things in the school, and but if there's stuff to do that's important, they'll do it, and they have an organization behind them that can help us. So there's some real value to it, I think. But it's, if you want us to start it, I think
I think it's a great idea.
we ought to start collecting some names, think about people who who ought to be on it, and and I'll call the people who were on it.
How
And
big is the group?
Hmm?
How big is the group?
right now, the last time I counted, it was about 25, and it could be much larger. But 25,
smaller.
because you know what happens? If it's a racial thing, some people come. If it's a thing that involves Ora Rosser, other people can. We had something having to do with Ora Rosser. If it's a march, you've got a whole different group of people who are going to come. There is that, and I think becoming prepared is important.
Is it your sense that that it is facilitated by an incident? That more people will come if there is an incident?
Oh, sure. Well, more of the people who are interested in that incident,
Okay.
or in that type of incident.
One of
But I
my
mean,
sons said.
so that you have a big group that you keep subsetting depending.
From
on-
what one of my sons said, my guess is we're going to have one soon. I've got a son that lives in Richmond, Virginia, and if you've ever been in Richmond, Virginia, there is a boulevard that has statues of Civil War officers, and there's also one of Arthur Ashe, which seems strange. But he's from Richmond, and that's the reason for that.
One of these statues is not.
That's a good one. That's a good one. But he said that they are organizing to come, and the same group that was in Charlottesville is organizing to come to Richmond, and they should be there soon.
Oh.
So,
Who leads the group?
I I don't know, I've led it in the past.
Oh, you have, okay.
But it doesn't mean I have to do that either, but, and people, you know, in a way, people lead it depending on the
Incident.
incident. That's okay.
Do you know what other community response groups, how they organize in other cities in Michigan?
I'm a member of the Canton group, and I keep my finger in it because I want to see what they're doing. And they've got the police would lead that group. And it's a little strange. They have, I mean, we could do this too. They have fairs. They have.
But that's
No, it's a good thing. It's a good
But isn't there
thing.
one now?
But they don't actually deal with hate crime, with
Yeah.
crimes anymore. They
Only
don't.
if Leslie convenes it. Are you
I think
thinking-
there is one that the police, I think they have twice a year where they recruit people and they sign up one who, involved in the art fair,
The police?
yeah, I think it's called community, something response team. And they are civilians.
In Ann Arbor?
In Ann Arbor.
That the police organize?
Yeah, that the police organize.
There's
Is this
a
like an
police.
emergency response, a civilian emergency?
Well, they do have
That's for
emergency
events.
response.
For
They
events.
do.
For
They have one
events, yeah.
for
Oh, for events.
Yeah,
for what?
He said for events.
for events, yes.
Oh, yes, they do have one for events, and they have something, I think, for emergency, where they have lots of physicians and, you know, for tornado, or, I think more physical
Yeah.
kinds of emergencies.
I will get more
Yeah,
information,
let's
because I know
see.
somebody
Yeah.
who's on.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But, yeah, I know there are things like that.
Okay.
So is it your sense that you think we should pursue this?
Yes.
I think so. yeah.
And then we'll hear more about it, and please keep your eye on people who might be interested, people interested.
Could you give us a sense, or like give us a list of, like, who in the community, like what community leaders
I
were
did-
represented
I
before?
did-
If you have a list from when the group
I
was
sent
last
you
active,
one.
it would be great to look at that.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that maybe we could spend some time, at our next meeting, if not also on email. I mean, we can do this on email as well, but just sort of talking about,
Mhm.
who would it be good to approach to be members of this group?
Yeah, okay. I sent you a flyer for the community response group that was written before, and it looks like this. It was part of your materials.
Yeah.
Like this. And it sort of talks about what it does.
Yeah, but it
Yeah,
doesn't really
right.
talk about who exactly is
Right.
represented.
And I
which
can
is
send
what
you all a
yeah.
list of kinds of people.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
But it has to do, yes, I'll write about that. Anything else on our agenda? We're running out of time here. 5
It's
minutes.
just the ban the box.
Ban the box thing.
Nothing to say except that I think when Pam and Leslie meet with Colin to talk about the city contractor report, they're also going to ask for contact information for city contractors, so that, and get their buy-in so that we can contact them to see what their current practices are. When somebody applies for a job with them, do they ask for criminal record up front, information up front, or is it further along in the application process? The purpose of this is to see whether, is to get a sense of what their practices are, so that we know whether to pursue asking city council to extend the ban the box to the applications of city contractors, which a lot of cities do. Ann Arbor does not. And I guess the other thing I would add about the city contractors is that we revised part of the poster that gets sent out to all the city contractors, that they're required under our ordinance to post, that explains what the ordinance is. There was a section on the complaint procedure, which was a little outdated, that is now up to date, and Colin said as of today, he'll start using that new one.
Yeah. It's interesting, you don't think you're doing that much, but that poster is only a year and a half old. And I was
Right.
surprised at how many things were outdated already.
Right.
It's nice to know we're doing something.
He's watching.
Anything else?
Let's say you had on the agenda the skate park gathering.
Yes.
Was anybody else there besides me?
Yeah, you might want to say something about it, because you were moved, weren't you? Or you were surprised.
I was surprised by the number of people, because it probably was on a Sunday afternoon. It was probably, I don't know, a couple hundred at least. But I also, let me be straight, I was angry at the end. And I shared with my wife why I was angry. So we heard a number of really good talks, people's concern about the racism, anti-Judaism pieces, the attacks on the gay community. But then somebody got the idea, let's sing We Shall Overcome and Hold Hands. And that's what ticked me off. And I'm going to tell you, and I think that all of you need to hear this. It took me back to singing the song in the 60s. And obviously I was younger. And I thought that people were serious in the 60s. And I don't think they're serious now. Because all of this stuff has been happening. There were very, very few black people there. There could not have been 10 black people there. All this vitriolic racism has been going on day after day after day. And we know white people have to see it because we see it too. So if your parents weren't doing anything, you weren't doing anything, your grandparents weren't doing anything, and now you are surprised that this action is happening, it's hard for us to take it seriously that you really care about it. I'm telling you straight. It's really hard to feel that way. And because we see it all the time, if you respond to it every time you're in a bathroom and you see it, or you see it on a wall, you will go crazy. I remember my wife calling me, and she walked to work past the rock. And she was furious because there's this racism stuff on the rock. And she's going off. I said, babe, and she knew I was going to be going right past it too. I said, babe, I don't even want to hear it. I don't care. I mean, we see it all the time. I can't let my rhythm be messed up over this. Well, do we have the spiritual fortitude, not just the intellectual fortitude, to do something about all of this hatred that is built into this society? That's a question. If I were a gambler, I would say no. I would say it's going to happen to my grandkids. That's what I would say. Because I don't think that America really, really, really wants to change. And I'm not just talking about those on the alt-right. I am not. So what we need to see is that people want to do something one-on-one. They want to do something in small groups. They want to do something in large groups. They want to do something when they go to the poll. It needs to be across the board and not just every now and then. So, I'm sorry.
Okay. How did you find out about that? I didn't know there
Yeah, I
was a
didn't hear about it.
get together.
There was an announcement in Meeting for Worship, after Meeting for Worship, that there was going to be, I hadn't heard about it before,
At the Friends?
at the Quaker.
Okay.
Yeah, Friends. And that's how I found out about it. And God knows I have 10,000 balls up in the air right now, but I could not go, so I went.
Mhm. Okay. You know, one of the things, it would be helpful, I don't know. But I wish everybody knew. I wish I'd have known. I don't know if I would have gone, but I would have wanted to go.
To communicate that to the entire commission body?
As a start, yeah. And something like, I mean, if we really want everybody to come out when there's hate, maybe we have to do something.
I think it was at 2:00 and I learned at 12:30.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not blaming
You know,
you, I'm just
yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to address it, because
Sure.
I feel bad about that too.
I really, now I don't think this is gonna happen in Ann Arbor. But I really wish there was a website that told you when there's gonna be demonstrations and who's demonstrating. And I had suggested to certain people that they do that.
Wait a minute, can't we do that? I mean, we can't do it as a Human Rights Commission, but can't we just do it?
You mean put it up on our website?
No, have a Facebook,
No.
just, no? No one can?
I mean, it depends what you're talking about. Exactly, you'd have to be really specific about what it was. To me, this is the kind of thing that a community response group
Right.
could do. would
So-
be to
so we could do that.
The
Tell
media, get out the word in
Ah.
all
Right.
directions to a lot of
We could, so we could put up events you should know about if you're interested
Right.
in,
Yeah,
And then
it
they can
doesn't mean
share
you're
it in
endorsing
there.
it. It's just people know.
Sharon.
Yeah,
I mean, it's sometimes it's embarrassing to be downtown and you see a demonstration, you don't even know what's happening.
yeah, no.
Right.
And and you're at a
Yeah.
restaurant. It's
Wow.
But
And
that's,
because
yeah,
I'd have been in it if I'd have known.
yeah, that's lack of media. We just
The
don't have
media.
news
but we
media.
could do
Just don't
that.
have it.
I mean,
I don't think it's just a lack of media. I think it's a lack of like connection too. Like obviously people get out to these things, but we're not looped into those people or those networks.
but that's what the community response group could do.
Yeah.
That could, and they are hooked in more, and
Because it's a
they could
broad.
hook to people who
They
are
all
hooked.
have their own email.
I mean, if
they
you have a
their own
community
Facebook.
response group, you could ask the newspaper to tell you every time.
Well, you know, in the old days, and I realize, you know, it's a different world today. You know, if you had a community response group, you know, in the old media world, you would have the publisher of the newspaper would be like one of the ringmasters for a community
yes,
response group. I don't know whether there's a comparable,
Mhm.
you know, media person in Ann Arbor.
I
who
think
could-
it's time we find out.
Yeah, who could take on that role.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you find that out?
I can try, I mean, sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just that it doesn't seem, you know, it doesn't seem like there is I mean, there is no Ann Arbor news anymore, and there's no, you know, it doesn't seem like there's a big kind of media presence in Ann Arbor, centralized presence.
Right. There's M Live, but that's for
about it.
everybody.
Yeah.
and-
There's the daily.
There are certainly
There are.
people
There's
in
a
M
daily.
Live who write more regularly on what looks like an Ann Arbor beat.
Right,
Yeah.
there are
Right.
some regular
Understand.
MLive reporters
Yeah,
who,
right.
if you invite them to the event, they always show up and they always write
Yeah,
about it. So
right.
we would definitely want
Yeah.
at
Right.
least one of them
That's
on
right.
this- on this.
That's
But the
right.
old-time newspaper publisher
Right, would
was a
have
guy
known.
who was
Right.
hooked into everybody and, you know, just could pull them all together. That
In
kind of
fact,
person
maybe
doesn't.
we also need
Well,
is
you
a,
make
is-
that person.
I mean, demonstrations need permits. So we
Right.
could find out we could ask.
That's what I thought you were saying, was that, you know, I mean, if you're going to have demonstrations where people have to apply for permits, presumably that's public information.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if there's a
website
website or anything.
Well, there's all sorts of stuff posted that nobody reads, right?
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah,
I'm sure it's posted.
right. Okay, well, so start thinking about it. Thank you. See, and thank you for asking such good questions, Vivian.
Leslie, I did notice that we didn't really get to the hate incidents in Ann Arbor. Is that something we can talk about at the next meeting?
I thought that's what we were talking about.
Oh,
We
the
sort of were
skateboard in
talking-
the out bar and the.
Convene this
Yeah,
group in order to
and,
have
yeah.
a larger
I
community
I
response.
sort of had a similar question, like, before the community response team is like convened, like when a major like hate crime incidents, like what happened to our bar happens, like does this body respond in any way? Like,
I actually
do we-
called and talked to Keith Orr about it, and on behalf of, and that's how I put it. I did not talk to anybody from the skate park, because I didn't know who to call. And I didn't talk to anybody from the Jewish Family Services who got a bomb threat.
Yeah.
So
Is this,
I mean,
Concordia
so we have
also.
never done that, but yes, I have a feeling that community response should be doing that too.
okay, but before that happens, should we be doing anything about any of these incidents now?
Well, I don't,
Well, I
Yes.
thought that's what you were
that's what I
proposing
did
with
this time.
group.
But it doesn't mean,
Well, so also when I sat down
Yes.
with the mayor, and he's like, why don't we do a rally in Broncourt in response to all of these, incidents? And, a lot of the Gym Toy Board had just done Outfest, and so they are not, awake. And obviously there was a huge response with the GoFundMe to
Mhm.
support
Yes.
the Out Bar
Yes, that
to
was-
recover whatever damages were done. But the community response, the on the ground people physically coming together and, visibly supporting each other hasn't happened yet. Of
Right.
course there's been a, technology wise, we all felt supported. And people said things online, but we haven't come out and sort of organized around it yet. And so I agree that is something, a larger community response team, so that not just the, LGBT community comes out because we, tell the people we always tell, but also, leaders of other, networks that might be a part of this group can say, oh, this is something we all care about. These are issues. This is a response to the larger, uptick in hate, and not just about, that thing that happened in Broncourt. And I feel like this organization that you are talking about could bring, a more universal or a larger response where people know it's happening. Had I known about the thing at the skate park, I would have gone as well. Didn't even know about it until today.
Right, I
And
And that's something that would usually show up in my Facebook feed. So I'm a little, surprised that I didn't hear about it. So yeah, I do feel like we need to reconvene this group so that there's a network, and when someone organizes something or wants to organize something together, we have, people who can get the word out,
But
if nothing else.
it sounds like you made private calls, which is great, but is there any
A
benefit
formal response, I guess.
for like a formal public response in terms of both raising our profile and also putting the weight of an actual board/commission of the city behind the affected groups?
What would you propose?
Yeah.
What that we do?
propose.
Like in the form of a
Like-
resolution or
Or
what?
I don't know if we issue statements or like press releases or anything like that. I don't know what that would look like, but is that something we do ever?
We have not done it in the past. I think we could do it. One of the things, I'm not sure, because we're an odd organization. I'm not sure what we're, but because we've been, we're not an advocacy group. So we've got to be careful that we do it in a way that is okay. They're very careful about us acting like a government organization. That's part of the reason we have so much trouble with Facebook and, with the kinds of messages we send out. And community response wouldn't have that kind of trouble. I don't know what we could do. We certainly could make a resolution against those kinds of things.
Yeah, so, I think part of the problem, Vivian, is that odds are that when these incidents occur, there are, they're gonna be in between when our meetings are, right? And so I think if we wanted to figure out a way to respond to things like this, the first thing that we should do is put a process in place for, how would this look like? So when an incident happens and we're not close to a meeting, is there a way that we can
That's a good
communicate
idea.
via email about the incident? And then, maybe each of us would take turns writing up a resolution if we agreed, could take turns, if we agreed that this was something we wanted to support. Maybe there would be some templates and sample resolutions that we could draw upon from the past, and then we could respond quickly, right? It's sort of, if something happens tomorrow, the day after this meeting, it sort of takes the wind out of the sails a little bit if we're not going to respond until the middle of October, right? So, I think coming up with a process about how to respond. I think a resolution is one good way to do it, and a simple way to do it. It's an easy way for us officially to show support, for something or to condemn something, and that may be something that we, that we should think about. And then a community response group could do so much more, but So that's off the top of my head, that's sort of the way that I would approach it.
Is this something we could put on the agenda and I could ask for some legal guidance around it, just because I have
You mean like Nancy?
Like Nancy.
Yeah.
I feel like this is where I say you have done this community response group before,
Mhm.
and the need is now, and let's get that.
Oh, I don't think we're
Yeah.
not asking Nancy about whether or not we can form the community
No,
response
that we're
group,
not
right?
doing, that, no,
We're
that's.
We're just talking about whether or not we as the
We already
commission
did
can
that.
respond to a hate incident.
Right, and just condemn and resolve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. We could. Not sure how helpful
Yeah,
it
that's
would
what-
be as
I agree.
actually making sure things get filtered to the community
Yeah, I
to
mean,
do something.
I actually thought that calling the out bar
Was-
and saying the Human Rights Commission wants to know if there's anything we can do, I think supporting the victim is really helpful. It's trickier in like the skateboard sort of interest, a graffiti, which is, not directed at an individual business. Well, I realized that the outbar was actually an attack, not just on the outbar, but still it was a private.
Right, and
I
the
thought
liaison
that
did.
was important for us
Yeah,
to do.
I
I
thought
don't
It's
so
know.
too.
important for us to do, but the thing
Maybe
is,
it's
it's
public.
private.
It's
not like
private,
the
right.
rest of the LGBT
No, it's not
community sees
enough,
any of
I
that.
agree,
Right.
but community response. My concern about doing a resolution every time there's a hate
Yeah.
crime is that unfortunately,
Yeah.
God,
Yeah,
there are a lot of them, and are we gonna decide, well, this one's too small to
Yeah,
respond
there's
to,
a line
this
drawing
one's
problem.
That's right.
And then all of a
I
sudden.
don't know, it's
Fair
all
enough.
bad, and nobody,
Yeah.
Yeah.
obviously, it's all bad, so,
Yeah.
you know.
Fair enough. And so maybe the thing to do, maybe the most facile thing that we can do is to not always put it on Leslie, but maybe we could take turns calling, an organization and saying, hey, I'm calling from the Human Rights Commission. Is there some way that we can be supportive of you? Is there something that you
Yeah.
need from
We're
us?
concerned. I mean,
I just feel like private conversations don't demonstrate to the broader community or the affected communities, like
Yeah.
to the Jewish residents or the LGBT
Yeah.
Right.
residents,
Yeah.
that the HRC does anything or could do anything for them. Like talking to the out bar is fine, but it's not like
Yeah,
a gay man in the community knows about that
Yeah.
unless he's associated with that bar and happens to have a conversation.
right.
So there's no.
Mhm.
So what do you
There's nothing
propose?
wrong
It
Do
is
you think a
community
resolution
response.
each
I mean,
time?
it is that kind of a thing. What I don't know is whether we're gonna start looking like an advocacy group, and there will be controversial hate things. We may be, I don't know. Huh?
But so
We're,
Wendy,
yes,
do you
we're
think-
nothing
do
if
you
we're not
think a
controversial.
resolution each time is the way to go?
I think maybe.
Okay.
Okay. Well, shall we get back to it at next meeting and,
I mean, is there
or do you
anything
wanna
that's just happened that we would need to respond to?
Well,
What's the
these
most
four things are the
recent?
ones I know about. I don't know if any of them have been solved. I mean, I know that the graffiti in Concordia, they've got a picture of somebody, but I don't know if they know who the picture is of.
I mean, we could do one resolution referring to all of these things.
We could.
And saying
Absolutely.
that, just, something broad.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing wrong. Right now, we have all these incidents. Let's get a resolution out. I think it's a problem responding to every single one, but we should certainly do something right now. You know what I mean?
Condemning the
Okay.
outbreak of
Yeah,
Right.
right.
incidents,
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And our intent to convene a larger reconvene.
That's
That's
good
a-
idea.
possible.
That's
you know
good
what, that's a
idea.
good
That's
idea.
a good idea. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And we should have a practice of reaching out every single time if we can identify a victim to let them
Yeah.
know that we exist,
Uh-huh.
and if there are future incidents or if there's something that we can do to help get the current incident investigated, that we are here. So we should have a process for that too. Can we, even though they haven't contacted us to request support, can we just say, hey,
The
we
community
exist?
response group certainly
Okay,
can.
the community response.
And
Got it.
yeah, I think that's the way it goes. I can do it because I meet with the chief every month, but I really meet with him as in my community response group
Capacity.
avatar, yes. Yeah. I mean, that was the initial justification for that at any rate. Okay.
Does somebody want to draft a resolution?
Yeah. I know somebody who drafts really good resolutions.
Andre?
You.
I am doing a big presentation on Friday, and you know what I mean. It's just
That's fine.
Yeah.
when would we need this by? When it's something that we should get out quickly, preferably before the next
I don't
meeting.
actually know. I think they're going to condemn hate and refer to a few of the incidents within the next month.
I'll draft it.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank
So
you,
this-
Vivian.
I noticed she was pretty silent out
Vivian
there.
might want to help.
So is this on behalf of the commission or the community response group?
This would be
Commission.
from the
Does-
commission.
And so along those lines, then, would we want to publish that on our Facebook and Twitter page,
Yeah.
that we have sponsored this resolution?
Yeah.
Well, that's right.
I think because it's a resolution, it's
We
easy.
could.
Like if it's something that we've created and it's
Mhm.
formal, then they have to allow that.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be good.
And so along those lines,
It's got
what we're doing
possibilities.
now, in a sense, would become precedent setting?
Excuse me?
What we're doing now,
Yeah.
or proposing to do now,
Yes.
would become precedent setting until such time we decide to change or alter it or whatever.
We don't know yet. Yes.
Understood,
Right,
but
I
I'm
won't-
just saying,
yeah.
based
Could
on
be.
that, this is the beginning of whatever we envision doing going forward. So let's say there's an incident every month, then we need to maybe plan on responding to, I'm hoping that there aren't more hate incidences, but let's say for the sake of argument that there are, or other things that we would want to involve ourselves in, then I'm just saying we would want to make that a part of our responsibilities and list that in the agenda and in the minutes.
Right.
So let's say that next month, there's more incidences than what we currently are aware of. So we'll agendize that, we'll discuss how it is we're going to publicize it and what it is that we're gonna do. We're gonna list it on Facebook and Twitter, and then we're gonna discuss what, if any, activities we want to involve ourselves in.
Yeah, I mean, if we have a resolution that's just like broadly, written broadly enough to just condemn like hate crimes in general, whenever a new thing pops up, we could republish that. And
It's a
circulate
template.
too.
It
Yeah.
becomes a
We'd
template,
be
right?
like, reminder, we stand against
Yeah.
hate crimes.
Mm.
We don't
Right.
like those.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be easy to bring that up when
Yes.
it's come
Exactly.
forward again.
Right, and I suppose the worst thing that could happen is we miss one and someone says, hey, you missed one, and then we publish it with the next,
Right.
with the
Yeah.
next resolution.
Okay.
Just,
I mean, I suppose-
must be careful not to,
It's got
make
lots
empty-
of possibilities.
It
Right, well,
can-
that's
it
the
can
other,
feel
that's the other
empty.
worst thing, right, is
I
people could
don't-
say, all they're doing is condemning this, do they do
Right.
anything besides condemn things, right?
Which is
I mean,
why I like that we are doing something. We know that we are, helping revitalize this community response
Yeah.
group. I
Make
know
that
that
part of
something
it.
other than an empty statement is happening, and that's why I'm
That's-
agreeing to draft it.
yes.
Not because we're going to publish a new one with a list of incidents that happened this month.
Yeah.
Well, part of that comes with the limits to our authority, right?
Right, yeah, absolutely. And I do think it's something that we should have on the agenda and say, what have we done? What can we do? Who can reach out to this? You know what I mean? I do
Yeah.
think that it should be
No, I
on
think
our
that's-
agenda and that we
Yeah.
can,
Okay. And
talk through.
so over the course of a month, we'll send it to each other, anything that we see. If it weren't for Linda reading the paper as well as she does, I wouldn't have
No,
known
I
about.
don't.
Well, but you're good. But all of us. You do a lot better than I
get a
do.
daily MLive thing, and I sometimes look at it and I sometimes don't. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's what I do too. And I was off for a couple of weeks because I think it was tired of my bounce back messages from when I changed. Now I'm back on. Do you know which 4 things we're talking about?
I
Because it's
do.
not clear in my mind, but you know all 4?
I am pretty sure that I
Yeah.
know all 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
There's the,
About
yeah.
every single one of them.
Okay.
On behalf of Leslie
No,
and as
I
vice
agree.
chair, I order you not to do this before your Friday deadline.
No, not before your Friday deadline, right.
Yeah.
And not while you're supposed to be sleeping, because you probably really need it. Your 7 hours a week that you sleep.
Right. I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank goodness.
I
Second.
second. We all
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So are you gonna?
That's the name I was trying to make.
Huh?